Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 75, and our book is Sigismund, the Eternal Crusader by John French. The book is a departure from our regular, I said Warhammer 40k Book Club. Technically, this is Warhammer 30k Book Club tonight. It is a departure from our regularly scheduled reading schedule. And is one of the Horus Heresy books that is one of the character-focused books in which Sigismund speaks to the remembrancer Solomon Voss to explain why he thinks there will only be war in the grimdark future. We did not post several questions on our website. Given that this is one of the character-focused books, and it's shorter, and it's Warhammer 30k, we're going to mostly just kind of let conversation naturally progress as we go through this. But we do encourage participation in our discussions via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Box channel. Spoiler warning, if you haven't yet read the book, go check out the book, and then come back and check out this episode, as we're going to be discussing the book from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. First off, did you like the book?
It was okay.
Kind of how I felt too. It's okay.
Yeah,
It was okay.
There were parts I really, really enjoyed, but it's, then again, it is the character book directly following Luther, and I think a lot of these are going to... Luther set that bar really, really high.
Luther set the bar really high. You know what? Constantine did too. Like the first two books were such 1-2 punches right out of the gate. Chris Raitt showed us things that we didn't know. Constantine. That happened. Anyways,
I was
Valdor.
like, do I correct her?
We're that close. We go by first names now. Valdor. The Valdor book was really good out of the gate, and it explained the whole Thunder Warrior thing, and the whole way that it was done really showcased Valdor's character in a really nice way, right? Because the one lady thinks she's in control, and then it turns out Valdor is like, oh no, friend, I've just been playing you this whole time. Like, sorry. The Luther book is wild whole time. So this book...
Way to go, Azrael. That's all we gotta say.
Yeah, pretty
Forgot
much.
to close the door behind you on your way out.
Forgot? ?
I mean, maybe he was raised in a barn. I mean, that's what my mom would have said if I left
That's
the door.
what my mom would have said too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So there's a whole lot going on in that book. It answers all these questions about Luther, and it really helped us understand his character. I felt better. Like, I have never been a Dark Angels fan. I have never been a Luther fan in particular. I came out of that was like my book of the year. It was so good. It was just, I loved it. This book, unfortunately, here's what's kind of funny about it. I went into Valdor kind of neutral. Just kind of neutral. Like, I have no real strong feelings on Valdor, and I came out of the book going, oh, you. I went into Luther not liking Luther. I went into this book loving Sigismund, and I came out going, yeah.
Well, I mean, he's an Imperial Fist, so...
You got me there.
I mean, I didn't expect this to be wildly entertaining, because he is an Imperial Fist. I mean, honestly, I think the most entertaining I've ever seen Sigismund is... And you and I talked about this last weekend. It's James Swallow's Flight of the Eisenstein. And it's when they rescue the group of remembrancers and the Sons of Horus Equerry and Garrow off of the Eisenstein, and they're like, Horus has turned against you, and Dorn is flipping his lid over it and like trying to kill them, and it's Sigismund having to hold him back, which is kind of cracked me up. And then probably the other time that we really see Sigismund animated is when Abaddon comes out of the warp, and it was just like, buddy, what's up? It's been a while. Can we like sit down, have a chat, tea. Yeah.
Scene reminds me of that scene in Tales from the Borderlands. From Abaddon's perspective, he was just expecting it to be like, "You're my bro, 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 bro." Like, oh man. Yes. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I always liked Sigismund. I don't like some of the. Everybody knows I have really complicated feelings on the Horus Heresy by this point. I don't like what some of the authors and some of the books have done with Sigismund, especially Sigismund and Dorn. John French did seem to have more of that classic Sigismund Dorn relationship and the classic Dorn Sigismund. I guess I find him a fascinating character, but from a distance.
You like the idea of Sigismund?
I can like the idea of Sigismund.
I mean, so what I really liked about this book, though, was some of his perspectives on different factions and different characters in those factions. Like, I really, really enjoyed learning about his respect for the World Eaters, which you would think would be the complete opposite of what he would
that
think. So, like,
was actually one of my favorite scenes.
So, like, I didn't take very many notes because I'm a bad person, but it was like but I did write down, like, from page 135 is where he's talking to Boreas, and Boreas was like, he goes, because he's kind of disgusted with the World Eaters from what they've become from the Warhounds. And he says, the Warhounds were warriors of a great legion. And Sigismund interrupts him. I do not think they have changed. I think they have become more themselves. I think we are all like them. They have not changed. They have become true. And I really, really liked that interpretation.
I did too.
About them, and how he and Karn, really established this mutual respect. Like, Karn was like, "Oh, you here to judge me?" He's like, "No, I'm here to understand." And
right.
He even kind of like explains his feelings like across many different factions when, they get all heated with stuff. Like, he's kind of like the very quiet one, the quiet observer who has like very interesting insights into things. Like, I even had Horus's kind of coronation into War Master. For me, this was like the first time to really kind of read anything where that takes place, because like it gets mentioned, but you don't so far in Horus Heresy they haven't had like a full flashback, like when it happens. So when he's listing the factions that are there, I'm kind of snickering because I'm just like, wow, not very many loyalists are there. Like, Ultramarines aren't there, Dark Angels aren't there, but Lion was probably actually in the Lion's Horus Heresy Primarch novel. He mentions why he wasn't there. He was doing other things, but
he was busy.
He was busy, but you can kind of tell he's a little bitter, even though he's just like, well, of course Horus is going to be War Master. I work better doing other things. Like, well, you can keep telling yourself that, sweetie. That's fine. But yes, I mean, those, and especially for me, when he sees Abaddon and the two are just like, bro, so cool to see you, shake hands, have a chit chat, like, oh, right. They like to do that. They like to have, they like to take the, we all, like, cause we already knew who kills who, bickering and arguing and who killed who, but in the past they make whoever killed who be best friends.
Of course.
Sanguinius and Horus, Ferris and Fulgrim, now we got Sigismund and Abaddon.
Or they make sure to make best friends on opposite sides of the thing, right? They make it very clear. I mean, his best friend was Karn. One of them was Karn. There's a tragedy to that, right? Like, and of course, I will say, so going back to something you had said earlier, my favorite scene from the whole Sigismund x Karn thing is actually, he does understand the World Eaters. Later in the heresy, he doesn't necessarily approve of them, but he understands them. right? And he's giving them that chance. And my favorite quote of this, and it was actually quite lovely, is the scene when it's Sigismund, it's the Ultramarine,
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I know what scene you're talking about.
Escalahar,
Yeah.
and Karn. And Karn says, "You will remake what remains, build different ideas in the heads of the people that are born after we are gone. A mirror of Ultramar and Imperial ideals. That is what this will be. Everything else plowed under. And you call us barbaric." I liked the whole I liked the whole idea that Karn in the World Eaters, like especially before the heresy, before things go Ploin shaped, um, they had they did kind of have this ideal, right? Like, okay, everybody should get to die a warrior. Everyone should get to die a centurion with their weapon in their hand and at least go down with a fight. I liked that concept. I
Well,
thought that was great.
well, and when they were confronting that one rebel, and they're like, he's not going to comply. Like we should fight him.
Sigismund realizes that, right? He's just
Yeah,
like,
and Sigismund's like,
no.
yeah, he's totally right. And the Ultramarine, he's like, but we're gonna lose people. He's like, seriously, we're gonna lose like a bunch of people to humans. Just let them die with honor, because Karn was 100% right. Like, you let them live, it's going to fester, and there's gonna be another rebellion.
Or you're just gonna plow down their entire way of life. You're gonna make a little diet Ultramar, which is what the Ultramarines do, right? Because they're space Romans. But that idea of like, look, you can't just. This is not the way that the war that it. Karn felt that it should go, right? The World Eaters are still, again, they're very much die with honor, die on your feet, right? Don't just succumb to bureaucracy. I liked that whole scene, and I loved the idea. And of course, they always have to show that that's where where Sigismund learned to chain his weapon to his arm, right? That's why the Black Templars to this day chain their weapons to their arm. I loved that. Of course, my favorite scene in the whole book, I said that was, actually, I forgot. My favorite scene is when he attacks Sevatar, and Sevatar is like, you just attacked me from behind? Like, oh, don't tell me I have to like you.
Yeah.
I chortled aloud. That scene was so wonderful. But it does come to the heart of what I struggled with this book, is this book, by and large, like, look, did too long did not read. Sigismund thinks there will forever be war because he's kind of a pessimist.
That's all he's known, like literally his entire life, even as a boy. That is all he's ever known.
Yeah. Like,
And
I don't know that I
honestly,
need 200 pages for that.
honestly, he really did have the right of it, because he was even talking to Solomon Voss, and he was just like, we're not gonna be able to keep our eyes on everybody. Like, people are gonna get unhappy, things are going to happen, and he's right. He's 100% right. That's why the Roman Empire fell. Too big.
Right?
They got too big.
It's a little too big.
Same thing with the British Empire. That's why it ended up collapsing, because it just got too big. Like, you can still say, oh, there's still parts of the British Empire. Okay, whatever. But in the end, like, a lot of those countries, they released them because they was too big. And the island, so small. And everything else too big. And, the Imperium, you could 100% argue, is way too big.
Oh my god, yes. Like, they have extended their reach.
Even if the Emperor was still alive, there would still be problems.
There's just a little too much. And there is this, and it does kind of go to the heart of what was always one of the, now, this is a double-edged sword, because John French accidentally triggered one of my trap cards. There is a concept within the Horus Heresy that the authors are really leaning into that I hate. But we'll get there.
There was no perpetuals in this book.
Yeah, okay, fair. Different concept that I dislike.
Oh.
But we'll get there in a second. It does touch on one of the very interesting things about essentially why this was never going to work, right? Is that Yeah, and that one little scene that I really enjoyed with Karn and the Ultramarines and Sigismund, like, even as you said, Boreas is like, you you understand these people? Like, Boreas is kind of like, you had all these three very different legions with these three very different ideologies and three very different approaches to what this was, right? And then let's go back to the Night Lords scene, right? They show up, the Night Lords are doing as the Night Lords do. On the planet, Sigismund is unhappy with that because it's barbarism. Um, Love my adorable little psychopaths. But it's terrible, right? And so this book basically was Sigismund duels everyone. But it's one of those things where it's like, when you have people like when the Imperial Fests, how the hell do you have them fighting on the same side as the Night Lords? Like, these are they're not, and I understand that the idea was that, like, oh, okay, or at least it has been posited that you would have one of each of the different legions within a group, right? So you would have the little murder guy and the rage factory and the builder and the destroyer and the sneaky boy and all of that. They would all work in tandem together, and that would have been really great and all that, but that's not how it was going at the time of the Horus Heresy. I guess what I'm saying is, if the Emperor was surprised that this didn't work, he wasn't paying attention.
Okay, I'm confused. Surprised that what didn't work?
Surprised that there were so many, like, that the Primarchs and the Legions had personality issues, that they greatly disapproved of one another, that they did not work together in sync. And part of that is because they ended up compartmentalizing, right? And you had the Night Lords off following Conrad Kurz, doing as the Conrad do, and you had the Imperial Fists off doing what Rogel Dorn does. They disapprove of one another. When you think about it, like, obviously what Sigismund did in that scene was excellent. He was supposed to stop Sevatar. He was supposed to try to stop what the Night Lords were doing. But if you're the Night Lords, who the hell are you? And what is it? How dare you tell us how we take over a planet? Like, it's one of those things that's always very interesting to me, to the Horus Heresy. It's not beyond the Primarchs themselves, just the legions, where you look at this and you're like, how in the hell did the Emperor think these guys were going to all work? Especially when he had them as compartmentalized as he did.
Well, if you go to the whole, like, nature versus nurture, right?
And that's my trap card about the Horus Heresy right there. We'll get there in a minute.
Well,
continue.
The old nature versus nurture, if, they were supposed to be, like, a certain way, but then so it's like, are they the way that they are because of how the Emperor imprinted them, or are they the way that they are because of how they grew up? And you can make really good arguments for both. Like, I'm reading Know No Fear, and it is actually kind of heartbreaking for me listening to Know No Fear and hearing Lorgar the way he is, because I swear to God, that Lorgar Primarch novel, like, deeply affected me. Like, seriously, Gav Thorpe, like, you need to cut this out, but, like, it deeply affected me because it just makes me so sad. Like, where was that sweet boy that Corferon beat, but he was still so sweet and nice to everybody, is gone. And that sucks. The only reason why I strongly believe he even tolerated Erebus and Corferon was because he was a sweet man. And he was loving and loved everybody. And Monarchia, what happened with Monarchia was just such a slap in the face, when all he's ever wanted to do was just show his love for everybody. And it really went into, like, some of the problems he had with his brothers, that he really wanted to connect with all of them, but some of them just did not like him. Like, Ferrus Manus was always very, very mean to him. Right. And Vulcan was always okay with him, but he commented, Vulcan liked everybody, and Horus, he's like, everybody loves Horus. Even Alfarius mentioned that in his Primarch novel, that everybody loves Horus. And it's really funny because even in Know No Fear, when Guilliman's talking about who his closest friends are, he says it's Dorn, Ferrus, and Horus. And Sanguinius. Like, okay. Everybody loves Horus.
Everybody loves Space Jesus.
Well, and Horus. Everybody loves Horus, you know. Actually, Al Ferris didn't like Sanguinius because he mentioned about like he's too pretty for his own good or something. It was kind of a funny remark. But
right.
Regardless, you know, but again, it's like, you know, just with what happened to him, who knows what could have been, right? If he was raised by the Emperor, if he wasn't with Corferin, would he have stayed that sweet man? Who knows? Right. And it's the same thing with Conrad Kurz. Who knows what he could have been if he wasn't on, was it Nostra? What's?
Nostromo.
Nostromo. I thought to say Nostradamus, was like, that's not right. Nostromo.
Well, that's kind of where it's based off of.
I figured, but
so here's, okay, this is why this is my trap card. Because you're right. I have always been the fan of that concept, right? That who knows? And the Conrad Kurz Primarch novel actually handles that beautifully. And again, I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again in case you didn't listen to those previous episodes. There is nothing, not even Guy Haley himself, will disabuse me of the notion that is the Emperor talking to Conrad in that end scene. That is 100% the Emperor talking to Conrad. And he says, he's like, my vision for you was so much different. And like, there's this great scene in the book in which this kid tries to attack Conrad and he sees two futures, one in which he saves him and one in which he doesn't. And of course, the one in which he saves him, like, good things happen and it's so amazing, and he like helps him and he becomes this paragon of virtue. But then the kid just killed, like, the other ones, so if he doesn't do something, the kid just tries to kill him. And so of course Conrad believes that. He goes with the pessimistic route because that is what is real to him. And the Emperor's like, I would have taught you how to use your precog, and like, I would have helped you put that to good use. But, so on one hand, yeah, okay, cool, that's a really interesting concept, like what would have happened. But a lot of the authors right now are trying to basically say it is nature. So like this book even mentions it, right? That where does the 8th Legion predominantly find their guys? Prisons, slums with gangs, like kind of like where Conrad is on Nostromo, living amongst criminals and thieves. And
are you trying to say that's where they picked the Night Lords pre-Conrad?
Yeah, they say that in this book. Because remember, it's the 8th Legion that comes and finds him in the slums where he is. We have come for you. Remember, like he says.
I guess I missed it that they said that the original 8th Legion, the Terrans, were also from prisons.
They went and they grabbed down through. They hinted it in this, and they've established in other books that they predominantly. And I think I'm pretty sure Sigismund says that to Voss in this book. I might be conflating two stories at this point, but they constantly say that yes, they went through Terran prisons, they went through Terran slums that were heavy gang populations, right, for the 8th Legion, which then goes down to nature, and like they talk about how.
So if the Emperor really did have that plan,
which then comes back now, on one hand I could argue that the neat thing is that I've always argued that maybe this is all in the Emperor's plan. It's horrific and terrible, but maybe it's all part of the plan. And maybe he foresaw the heresy and something needed to happen for something else to happen down the road, because the Emperor does tend to think in the long game, hence why he imprisoned the dragon.
I am convinced he knew about the heresy.
I can see literally no other reason
for I can so many things happening.
Yes, and so many things ignored,
allowed to happen. I would say not even ignored, just allowed to happen.
Angron shows up one day, half of his legion is gone. What happened? Seems legit. Right, like I feel like the Emperor willfully turned a blind eye to so much, because again, this is the guy who imprisoned a Catan shard in Mars. Yeah, like he has a.
Is that what we've decided the Void Dragon is? I have no idea. I can't keep up.
Yeah, he's a Catan.
Okay. I figured it was an actual dragon that St. George slew. I mean, it's kind of the world I live in.
But there's okay, so I do like that argument and I do love that argument and everything, but it does make other arguments moot, and I do dislike sometimes, because I feel like on one hand there is that big argument and I really love it and it's a great debate and I could have an entire TED talk on this, but I don't necessarily know that that's why some of the authors are doing it. Like, I don't necessarily know that they're trying to build towards that. I feel like it's more like C. You see what's going on there? They recruited from prisons.
No, I think it's more of the latter, not the former.
Yeah, same. I think it's more like a kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. See what I'm doing there?
I call it the George Lucas effect.
Yeah, pretty much. I have to spell this out for you.
See, we knew what we were doing the whole time. See.
I knew it. A. Yeah, pretty much. And I don't. That was like a really long-winded rant about how I don't like that concept. And every time it shows up, like, I might have liked this book a little bit more had that, like, it's just one of those concepts, and we all have that. When you and I have talked about that multiple times on this podcast, we all have those little tropes, those little concepts that when they appear, we're like, I'm out. And yes, on one hand, it's like a throwaway line of dialogue. It's like maybe a page's worth, but it triggered my trap card and made me very sad. I just, that's one of the things that I struggle with. Having said that, it was interesting to me that the 8th Legion picked him up initially.
Oh.
Little ganger boy. Well, seeming ganger boy.
Why?
There's been a few characters here and there that have had those little moments where they're like, I don't know if I'm in the right Legion or not. Or I was almost this Legion, but then I was this Legion. And it's just...
it's like the sorting hat.
Kind of, yes. But it literally was, right? When I have to assume that was Amara Stardy who's talking to him, and she's like, oh, definitely 7th type. Which is really funny the way she was talking about it so clinically, right? Like, oh, 7th type, 4th type. No, trust me, that one's 7th type. But I liked when they were like, are you sure? I'm sure. But the idea of Sigismund almost being a Night Lord?
Well, I'm guessing that's just because of where he came from.
Probably, yes. But had they just been like, well, 8th Legion picked him up, he's 8th Legion. There's a good what if. Nobody tell Marvel, they'll write an entire series about it. I'm a bitter ex-Marvel fan.
I'm sorry. Well,
it's okay.
But Kieran Gillen's series on Marnie's Calgar was pretty good, so...
It was pretty good.
So it could be like that.
It could be like that. But there were there were some little flavor pieces here and there. What did you think of the overall format of it being that dialogue between him and the Remembrancer?
Overdone.
Agreed.
It's probably, because I am reading the Horus Heresy, so there is a lot, although I'm kind of like past the Remembrancer phase.
This is... Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just, I don't think there's even any Remembrancers, like, on Calth. Now that I think about it.
Just dawned on me?
What?
You know how Marvel had Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3?
Yeah.
I feel like... The Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yeah.
I feel like the Horus Heresy arguably has Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. Phase 1 was the Remembrancer phase. Phase 2 was the Perpetual phase, which unfortunately extended off into Phase 3. But that was when Remembrancers were so Phase 1.
There might be more than one phase.
There's like 50 at this point. 10 at least.
But yes, like, we're past the Remembrancer phase, and Remembrancers, if there are any still alive, have been packed up and sent back to Terra. Good luck.
Sainted.
Or sainted, but I mean, good luck getting back there because there's some warp storms and we don't know if it's still there. That's kind of fun, right? Yeah, so, although with the timing of No Fear, but there's if there are remembrancers, they're not on McCragg's honor. They're not on Calth. They may be elsewhere in Ultramar, or maybe Reboot's like, I don't need remembrancers. I write down everything as it is.
Concern right now.
Well,
Beauregard's trying to kill my planet.
no, I'm just saying, well, before, because they were planning these ceremonies and these big feasts. It's going to be a big old party. You know, we're reconciling. Yeah. This is great. Brother Horace has the best ideas. yeah, he does, Pumpkin. He does. But I could just totally see Reboot like, I don't need remembrancers. I write down everything as it is. I'm my own remembrancer. Anyway.
Right. Which is about to bite him in the ass. But
it does?
In Godblight.
Oh.
Godblight references.
Yes. Right. Forgot. Anyway.
Maybe you shouldn't have written down literally everything.
Well, you know.
Oh my god, I was about to make a joke and then it dawned on me it's actually accurate. They might as well have called Godblight the book in which the historiator finds Robbie's journal. Should have put a better lock on that journal.
Well, I mean, they had a good lock on that journal. His name was, oh crap, I can't remember his name.
Let me go back. Why does that journal still exist? That journal should have been burned in a fire.
Tigurius.
Yes.
Oh, but we don't burn anything that the great Robbie Bobby ever wrote.
I'm just saying. Anyways, continue.
I don't even know where I was going with it anymore. Yeah, don't know where I'm going. Oh, so the remembrancer is so I'm past the remembrancer phase, but at the same time, I feel like I've read so much that's this kind of back and forth, either with a remembrancer or, I don't know, in the case of the first heretic, there was that saint priest woman, the Orgeltal, kept confessing everything to. So there was a lot of that whole back and forth. And honestly, I kind of got enough of Solomon Voss early on. Him and Euphrates Keeler both, whenever they would interview people, and it was a lot of that back and forth, like, you know, what can you teach me? Like, where can I learn from this? Because you're so great and amazing. And yeah, that's how it was, but is kind of over it. But I understand why they went that route, if they wanted him just to kind of talk about everyone, how he feels about the other legions and everyone he's ever dueled, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I guess Valdor and Luther both, I felt like, had a story to tell, like a one story to tell. Even though Luther's took place over like a long period of time, the point of Luther's story was that he had never lied to anybody. He didn't betray anybody. And these are his feelings on things. And everyone's like, right. Oh, so that means we should do this? That's my favorite part. It's like, well, no, that's not what I said. Oh, but that is. Okay, we'll do that. That's not. And he's frozen again.
Going with that. Pretty much.
But this one didn't feel like it had like one cohesive point to it, the way that Valdor and Luther did. And I think that's what's suffering from the most. Is that maybe, and I mean, that maybe it always was its point. That's just not what I was expecting. And that's, you know, that's not exactly the fault of the author. It just goes against my personal expectations for the book. I was expecting more of, I don't know what I was expecting. Just a cohesive story about, I don't know, how Sigismund got to be first captain, or I don't know, some other very significant, like how he and Karn became BFFs and the adventures they went on together. You know, these, like, this tale of two unlikely friends, you know.
Hunting and killing with Sigismund and Karn.
They're going to call it chain buddies.
I would have read the hell out of that. Not even going to lie to you. Would have read.
It would have been fun. I think Karn's a very interesting character.
He is. I don't like Solomon Voss. I've always kind of felt like he was an author insert. And this book definitely made me feel that way. It, much like John Grammaticus is clearly Dan Abnett. Solomon Voss really felt like John French in this book. And it felt, I don't know if you guys ever saw a movie called, or if you ever saw a movie called Adaptation with Nicolas Cage and I think it's Meryl Streep is in that. It's a meta movie. It is not very good. It is about what is his name? Spike Jonze, I think it is. It's about Spike Jonze or Charlie Kaufman. That is the character name. I can't think of it. Doesn't matter right now. It's about the writer of the movie. The writer of the movie adaptation was challenged with writing a screen adaptation of a book called The Orchid Thief. And it's about this guy who goes and he hunts these rare orchids. Well, the writer of the movie adaptation, the literal person, had so much trouble with this because it's a very dry book and he was having trouble with it. He ended up writing this movie in which Nick Cage plays twin brothers and they're struggling to write an adaptation of the book The Orchid Thief. And it is entirely an author insert, and it's super weird, and it's very meta and I kind of felt like this book was that. This felt like John French was challenged to write a book about Sigismund, and he was having trouble with it. So he had Sigismund try to help guide him, obviously, like the concept of the character. It really felt more like a thought exercise between John French and Sigismund as a character than an actual book to me, because I'm with you. I would have
that
liked
actually makes
to
me
learn...
enjoy it a little bit more if that's true. That's an interesting way of I mean, that movie sounds weird, but kind of makes it a kind of interesting way of making a book, although it doesn't mean that the book's going to be good.
Yes, Charlie Kaufman was the writer. The director was Spike Jonze. I could not keep that straight for the life of me. And yeah, it's all about Charlie Kaufman having trouble writing this book. And, damn it, I didn't mean to make you like it even more.
Well, it's just that interpretation just makes it very interesting.
That was my whole takeaway from the book, is I was like, oh, you didn't know where to go with this, did you? And I didn't. And you're right. It is very much like him being like, teach me how you feel about the legions, which in some ways made it felt very akin to Luther. Because the whole thing, as you said, is Luther basically trying to give his life lessons to the various chapter masters of the Dark Angels. And this kind of felt like the same thing of like, well, let me give you these life lessons. But there was no great revelation, no great understanding. I really didn't feel like I understood him any better at the end of the book. Like there was no character journey, no revelations.
No.
He pretty much started and stopped in the same place for me. And maybe it's just because Valdor and Luther were such tough acts to follow.
But Valdor, to be fair, I think was the same. There was no big revelations with him either, but I think he had a better story.
Well, I mean, just the concept of, yes, this is what happened to the Thunder Warriors. And the people were trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. People were not super jazzed with the Emperor and the whole removal of the Thunder Warriors. Like, there was a little bit of just, like, some of the... It wasn't, I guess, not a revelation.
Well, that was only just because she found one bitter Thunder Warrior. I was like, right. I have the thing. I have the smoking gun that's going to revolutionize everything. When it's just like, oh, pumpkin.
Oh, honey.
Yeah. You have no idea what's really going on here, do you?
It was a very interesting, though, look at the politics post-unification, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this, and how hush-hush the Adeptus Astartes were, right? The fact that everyone's like, where are all these resources and stuff going to?
And then the project exploded, and then Astarte was like, well, that's it. Burn the whole place down.
Yeah, I didn't love that part. And Luther was just, I mean, Luther, I feel very comfortable saying Luther might be Gavthorpe's finest work.
100%. So
when an author releases, like, their magnum opus, and you have to follow that, like...
Well, and
like, could you imagine if when you two played Under a Blood Red Sky at Red Rocks, you then had to follow that act?
Well, if you don't
But,
like U2, then...
I'm not even going to unpack that right now. I mentally can't handle that right now. So, but yes. It makes me feel bad.
Well, I think
I
it
don't
doesn't help that the Imperial Fists are just not a very... they don't have a lot of story with them. And
No.
they're kind of boring. But I think they're
very...
supposed to be
dry.
Dry. That's a better way to put it.
Dorn is dry. Sigismund's dry. The Imperial Fit, like their whole,
which is why I think that
their whole culture is they're dry.
Like Josh Reynolds' take on them was just so great. Like that one Imperial Fist when that human's trying to chit chat, and he was just like, "Oh, I see what he's doing. I'm going to small talk the crap out of this guy. It's going to be great."
Exactly. It's like, well, I'm going to win this. Yes, that was, I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't hate the book. I was expecting more.
I didn't hate it either. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. I just kind of was expecting more. Like, and you touched on something. I would have loved to actually, I mean, we just kind of made fun of the whole, like, the tragedy. But I would have liked to have seen more of him and Karn being friends. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of his and Dorn's relationship. He intentionally kept that very light.
I mock that, but, one thing I really loved about the Magnus Primarch novel was seeing him and Perturbo's a friendship.
Exactly.
Even though, it's it's a little ham-fisted and a little laid on thick, and especially when Perturbo's showing his retirement home plans, and it's just, but that's obvious, trying to hit the emotions because what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's kind of fan service, and I kind of like it. Honestly, it depends, I think, on the characters. And, and for us, like, Sigismund just doesn't hit that note for us.
He doesn't. And even though I would say, like, oh, it would have been, like I just said, like, it would have been really cool to see a book with him and Karn, but let's be real. Karn would have been the more interesting of the two of them.
Well, right.
Right? If the book had been more about his relationship with Dorn would have been the more interesting of the two of them. Like, I feel like whoever was aside of him, I actually was kind of hoping that this would have gone beyond the heresy and would have shown him starting the Black Templars. Basically, I kind of was like, that.
I was kind of looking at that too.
Especially because they have that whole dalliance into him joining the Templars.
Right. Well, and Luther already opened up that door for that, right? Because it starts in the heresy, and we get to experience 10,000 years of in and out of stasis, and when he walks out of the rock. So, question though, where does he go?
Luther?
Yeah, I mean, it's like trying to escape from Alcatraz. Where do you go?
The implication is he gets out.
It goes where? It is like Alcatraz. Like, it's a rock. Like, it's basically an asteroid floating in space with a tower. Where are you going?
As though the second he stepped foot out of that prison, someone somewhere was like, oh snap. Like, somebody popped out of the ethos. And by the ethos, I totally mean the warp.
Okay.
Somebody popped out of the warp and was like, hey, buddy.
It just kind of dawned on me. It's like, escaping from Alcatraz. Where do you go? Shark-infested waters?
What's his name?
Astalon?
No. The guy. Sorry. No.
Cypher?
Yes, Cypher. Thank you. The guy appears. The guy with the sword. He appears and is like, hey, buddy. You got 10,000 years to catch it up to do.
Let's ride.
Let's ride. You and me, buddy. there's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on with the Dark Angels, and I thought that that was just enough to be like.
But
what
yeah, you're
happens
right.
next?
Like a post heresy or like mid heresy whenever the Black Templars form, I think would have been very interesting too. Like, how did that happen? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we know how it happened. Gulliman's like, we're chopping down the legions, but where did the idea come from? Like, why did Sigismund
Well,
volunteer? Just there's questions.
right.
It would have been
There
interesting.
is. One of the key concepts that I think is interesting is that if you recall, is they deal with this in particular that is that Black Legion? Yeah, that's Black Legion. Where Abaddon sees him again. Remember, he says he's like, I knew you guys were going to be back, and nobody believed me. So I would have really liked to have seen after the heresy and after they all bamf into the warp, I would have loved to seen Sigismund being like, they're going to be back. And everyone being like, I don't think so, buddy. And him being like, nope, they're going to be back. Like, I would have loved to seen that argument. You could have done a little bit pre-heresy, but then that post-heresy of, this is not done. This is just the beginning. Like, I would have loved to have seen that. As you said, I would have loved to seen the Templars form. I would have loved to seen him be like, not less, not more than 1,000 Marines. Oh, right here. See, it says right here, unless you're on Crusade. Guess what, bitches? We're always on Crusade. Because, wait for it, they're going to be back. Like, that would have been so cool to me. I would have loved to have had a deeper insight into that rather than, I once dueled Sevatar. Do you know I once dueled Karn? Okay, buddy. Like, all of the badasses of the Horus Heresy. Yes, you dueled them all. And apparently you didn't want to be a Space Marine.
Well, he was kidnapped and forced to become one.
That was kind of all of the beginning guys. I'm going to be really honest. And I know that your byline says this, but I am so sick and tired of the I never asked for this mentality in that particular trope. I'm not a fan of. And I loved Deus Ex Human Revolution, but if Adam said I never asked for this one more time, I was...
To be fair, he only said it once and people just went with it.
I know.
I actually,
just the way he said it.
I saw the voice actor at a con once, and he said that he can't even say it anymore. Like, if he's...
That's really funny.
Like, he's just like, he'll say like, well, I didn't ask for that. Ah, no. He really changes it. He said people are just like, what is wrong with you?
That is not what I ordered, madam.
Right?
Yeah, like that was one of those things. Much like taking an arrow to the knee, the internet broke it.
That's what the internet do.
It is what the internet do. But it is one of those things that I don't like that as a trope. Like, I'm a super soldier. I never asked for this. Yeah, but you're gonna like live forever and you can do all these badass things. Oh, I know. Okay.
I guess you wanted to stay defending people from these gangs that were just out to kill everybody. I mean, that's great.
And the the traitor legions.
Right.
Yeah, those guys. Like his old BFF, Abaddon. Not his BFF, but, close enough.
He's one of his buddies.
It was tragic, you see.
Well, it's like, the first captains. I think it's got to be some unwritten rule that they all got to be friends somewhere. I mean,
that's true.
Abaddon. I mean, well, Erebus not first captain, but he was first chaplain. No one was going to be friends with Corferon.
Nobody was really going to be friends with Erebus unless they had bad intentions.
Typhus. Luther was first captain. Typhus was first captain.
Because remember, even Luther in that book was kind of like, I don't like this guy. Mm-hmm. He liked Typhon. Mm-hmm. He did not like... Even he was like...
I don't think anybody really liked Erebus.
Except for Typhon.
I don't even know if he really did. No, that's not true. Abaddon really liked Erebus. They really got along. That was like really accentuated in the early Horus Heresy novels, that they were really good friends. Well,
in those
I mean,
early Horus,
Abaddon thought they were friends. Erebus is friends with nobody.
there is that.
Erebus is the guy with the magnifying glass over ants, and everybody's ants.
Pretty much. He is the chaotic evil character, right? He just because he could. The cue Michael Caine saying some men just want to watch the world burn.
Right. Probably one of my favorite lines in No Fear. There's lots of them, but one of them is when the word bearers get there and they're like, yeah, apparently Erebus is already here and he really wants to see you. And he's like, well, he can wait. I'd rather take them all at once. They're a deplorable bunch. Like, oh, dang. He's not wrong.
Especially. Yes. This book, though, was a good break between, because we had the super fun Assassinorum Kingmaker, we did a bunch of Imperial Guard stuff, right? And Assassinorum Kingmaker, I joked that it ended with a call to Robbie Bobby. It was very fun, though. Catachan Devil didn't, right? Day of Ascension didn't, Krieg didn't. So it's time to not have a voicemail to Robbie Bobby. It's time to have Bob.
Bob himself.
Exactly. I don't want Bob at home. I want Bob. Which is why our next book is going to be... God, this thing's heavy. Trying to just, like, one-handed. I am soft. The next Dawn of Fire book, Throne of Light. Yeah. Hey, Carrie, do you want to hold up your copy?
Here's my copy. It's on my Kindle.
Yours is coming.
In theory.
Very, very slow rowboat from England.
It might be on the English Channel right now.
3 men in a boat, to say nothing of this book. There's an obscure reference for you.
God.
That's one of my favorite books of all time. But yes, we're going to get finally back into the Indomitus Crusade, back with Robbie Bobby, back with Guy Haley. It just dawned on us right before the podcast that the last Guy Haley book we read was in July of last year. It was our summer read when we were in Hawaii. Because nothing says beaches like Plague Marines.
I mean, that's usually, maybe it's nothing says beaches like Trader Marines, because the year before on vacation, we read Fabulous Bill. So...
we did.
Yeah.
And after all of our knocking on the Imperial Fists, I'm very excited, actually, that there's the Imperial Fist
and the Black Templars.
Be still my heart.
Well, I mean, it's really, we've seen in each book how Robbie Bobby interacts with the factions now that he's back.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing I will say about this, is that after the last Dawn of Fire book, we can only go up from here.
Oof. So cruel.
That book was not good.
You know what? I think the reason why people who hated that book were most likely Space Wolves fans.
If Luther was Gav Thorpe's magnum opus, the Wolf Time was his phoned in.
Oh, no. No. So you hated Ashes of Prospero, so would you actually say that's better than Wolf Time?
Yes, actually, I would.
That really surprises me.
I would go back and reread Ashes of Prospero twice before reading the Wolf Time.
Well, I don't want to reread the Wolf Time. That thing was fat. I don't got time for that.
Like, if I could go back in time and you were like, hey, do you want to read the Wolf Time? I'll just go read Ashes of Prospero a second time. That's how much I dislike that book.
From people I talk to on Twitter, I stand by it. I think if you were a Space Wolves fan, you didn't like it. But people I know who were not Space Wolves fans are like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You know, and I would actually challenge people on that too. It could have been any Legion. When you have a chapter master pitching a fit and like throwing his toys around the room like that, I don't like the Dark Angels. right? I can't stand that chapter. I would have been equally pissed off.
Oh, I totally expect Azrael to throw his toys around the room.
See, but not so childishly. I would expect him to kind of be like,
I don't
sorry,
know.
who are you?
I don't know.
A little scoffy.
But like,
See,
I know.
I don't like to see that. I don't like to see them behaving like children. Any of them.
But like I
Because if you're the
said
chapter
in.
master,
But it's like I said in that podcast, that's kind of what I always expected out of the Space Wolves to begin. So it just kind of fulfilled it. And, you know, it's possible Gav Thorpe is not the right person to write that, because I was getting the distinct impression from that and from Ashes of Prospero that he doesn't like the Space Wolves very
agreed
much.
100%.
So, and I think that makes it hard. You know, we can't always have, you know, because when Graham McNeil and Dan Abnett were writing the Horus Heresy, originally Dan Abnett was supposed to write 1,000 Suns and Graham McNeil was writing Prospero Burns. But as they were collaborating on it, they each learned that they liked the other faction so much better. And so they traded. But they were lucky in that they were able to do that. You know, Gav Thorpe may not have been able to do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he really thinks he does like the Space Wolves. Since it's like, well, you might, but sweetie, you don't write like you do. And that's fine. Like, I'm here for it because I'm not a huge Space Wolves fan, but, you know, I get it.
Yeah, I would have been as equally disappointed had he treated any Legion like that. It just seems so. We already had that podcast. I would go back over my feelings on that one, but I am excited to read more Guy Haley, more Bob, more Dawn of Fire, the golden figure on the throne and his chains breaking.
Yeah, I'll just.
Do you want to take us out from
back
Sigismund?
to swiping on mine. It's just not as satisfying.
Hold the nice pleather cover in my hands.
I
Let's
mean,
be real. Since my husband
like,
and I are reading this book at the same
have
time,
the
I'm
space
probably
for
also going to be on E.
I mean, it's ready right here. Space right there. Just waiting.
I'll probably also end up reading it on ebook because my husband and I'll be reading it at the same time, and you know that I'm not allowed to touch special editions.
Do you write in your books even when you're reading them out loud?
Yeah. I'll be like, "Oop, sorry, hold on, I gotta write something down. I have to highlight something or grab a thing."
Yeah, that's why I have my notebook.
And my husband sits where I'm sitting, and I sit in this chair and read this chair and read to him. And when he hears the page fold, he stops, turns around, Jennifer, holding the page.
Get Post-it notes, woman. Just stick that on there.
No. Shows how much I love them.
Yeah, never loaning you a book, but we already knew this, so we're just going ahead and go on out. It's getting late as it is. So you've listened to the Warhammer 30k book club episode regarding Sigismund by John French. So be sure to join us next time for Throne of Light by Guy Haley. So we'll be going back to the 40k podcast, 40k book club then. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those good things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read for McCrag. And I'm still off Arius. Hate to tell you, but that didn't come through at all.
Aww. Fine, I found my marker statue, so make us whole.
That's not 40k. What? All right, I'm done.
If you've played the Dead Space games, they are canon in 40k. Fight me. Actually, probably 20k.
I can't do this. I quit. I'm out. Good night, everybody.